is the Pegasus Podcast, presented by Night Sports Now. UCF news, views, and a few hot takes. Now, here are your hosts, Bailey Go Knights Adams and Christian Charge On Simmons.
Welcome into episode 153. Be sure you're following us on Twitter at BaileyJAdams22, at ByCASimmons, and at Night Sports Now. We don't have as so I think last week's podcast we had like a million things going. We had realignment, we had recruiting, we had spring ball, we had fall camp updates, all that stuff. We'll talk a little bit more about some questions UCF has to answer before the season starts or go heading into the season, and we'll also reflect on UCF's 12 for 12, the 25-game win streak, because we almost did like a separate podcast for all of that, because that was there's just so much to dive into there. But first, we have to get to our 5-star review question. But actually, before that, Christian, how are you?
I'm doing great. I'm doing well. Yeah, I'll have the listeners weigh in on this, because I'm still trying to figure out, for those of you who do for those of you who do watch the video version, I'm trying to figure out what I'm supposed to do when Bailey introduces the podcast, because the first couple weeks I'm just kind of like glaring at the camera, so I'm trying to like smile, but I feel like I did it weird this week because I forgot to. So then when Bailey's halfway through the intro, I realized I just went and like smiled at the camera, and I feel like it looked very awkward. So I don't really know what to do there. So if you like the video version, like, what am I supposed to do when Bailey's talking? Just let me know, because
the other thing,
I have no idea.
The other thing that the opposite side of that is me struggling with, like, I've done that intro, I don't know, 170-ish times if you include all of the other ones that we've done. This is episode 153, but there's all the other ones. And I don't think
we've done like 20 emergency episodes.
No?
We've done 161 total episodes.
Okay, so almost, not really. But as many times I've done the intro, I still don't know it that well, I feel like. I know it, but I always question it in my head. And so
That's amazing, because I've heard it so many times that I like hear it in my dreams at this point. Like, it's just burned into my brain. I don't know if it's because if I'm listening to you talk or what.
I'm balancing like looking at the camera and then kind of having one eye on like our outline, because I'm just like, in case I need it, I'm like looking at it, but it's like I need to look into the camera or look at you or look at myself. I don't really know where to look when we're on this, so we're really good at this.
I feel like that's a great like look into how our podcast works, is Bailey has said the exact same intro every single week for 150 plus episodes. And if you didn't know, we have an outline where, and I'm looking at it right now, his intro is written out for him, so he can just read it off, even though I don't think it's changed in like 2 years.
I also haven't like really read it word for word in that long. I always copy and paste each outline, and then I'll leave that part the same, because it's always the same.
Our outline is incredibly important, though, because having it in front of me is the only thing that keeps me from taking us on a 40-minute tangent, because I'll be like taking us down some insane rabbit hole, and I happen to glance down and I'm like, oh God, like, okay, yes, I forgot what we're supposed to be talking about. So it's very helpful.
Yeah. So we'll start with our 5-star review question, which is a two-parter. They're actually kind of wildly different in a way. But one of them, the first one goes, rank your top 3 college football writers/personalities that you look up to and aspire to become. And I think it's important for me to say up front that I'm not really answering the question, but I am. It's like, I like these three personalities a lot, and like they're some of my favorites in college football. It doesn't really mean I don't know if I want to be them, because I don't know them personally. Like, I don't know. I don't know. It feels weird to be like, yeah, this is who I want to be, because I don't know.
To quote Rocket Raccoon from Guardians of the Galaxy, ain't no one like me except me. So there's none of them I want to be, but no, I definitely have college football writers and personalities that I really, really enjoy, and a couple that I even kind of tried to model the show after when we started it. So there's definitely influence there.
Okay, I want to hear those 3, because I don't even think I know like what you're talking about. I don't know what our show is influenced by. So
I didn't really clue you in when we were setting up the show, but this was just the show I had in mind. It was the Andy Staples show. Is my number 1 and number 2 are Andy Staples and Ari Wasserman, who used to do the Andy Staples show at The Athletic. Andy's since gone to On3, so Ari Wasserman's still at The Athletic, and so they don't do the show together anymore. But we talked about this a lot, Bailey, when we started the show, was like, I wanted to, when we came up with a pod, toe the line between like being fans and being open about how we're fans of UCF, but still covering UCF fairly and being comfortable talking about the team critically. I wanted to kind of toe that line, and that kind of came from their podcast, because they did a good job of being like, huge fans of college football and entertaining from that, but still, covering it and offering real inside information. That's what I tried to make our podcast be like. And hopefully that's been successful. I feel like we've towed that line well. Some of you hate that we do that because we've gotten plenty of critiques over the years of why are you saying that my team is bad? This is a UCF podcast. And it's like, because sometimes while we've been here, UCF's played badly and we've had to talk about it. But yeah, so those were my top two. Should I just give all three?
Just give your third one.
And my third, which should come as no surprise to anyone, is Chris Vanini. I think Chris Vanini is awesome. He's the Group of Five writer at The Athletic. And I like Chris Vanini a lot because he's a really good writer and he's also a really good podcaster. And shocking that for someone like me, I would like people who can do both of those things. And he also, I think he views college football a lot more healthily than a lot of national media do. Like, I think he sort of sees the whole picture and understands that there are stories worth telling outside of who's going to win the national championship, and that's not something that all national folks see, and I just enjoy his content a lot. So that is my top three. That would have been an entirely athletic list if Andy Staples hadn't left, so shout out to Andy Staples for adding some diversity to my list.
Yeah, and I actually almost included Vanini on mine just because I like, he's such a good writer and like his work is really, really good, and I just like his personality. Like, I just think, I don't know, I think he and I could be friends. Like, just based on some, like, the way he tweets and, like, some of the stuff he tweets about. Like, I know he's, like, into, like, wrestling and stuff. So I'm like, yeah, he and I could just hang out and watch the wrestling.
You'll find this story funny. So there's no way Chris Vanini would remember this, but I met Chris Vanini at the Fiesta Bowl in 2018 because they had, like, a media, like, suite with, like, I don't know, it was just, like, a place for, like, media to hang out at the resort where everything was based. And it was, like, me and a bunch of UCF student media and Chris Vanini all playing poker. And we talked before about our friend Evan, who we founded Night Sports Now with years ago, and he's now a sports anchor in North Carolina. And it was like we all are playing poker, and I'm trying. This was back when I was still a college student. I think I was like 20 or 21 back then, and I was like trying to figure out how to make it. So I was like trying to ask Vanini, like, how did you like make it? And get his like story. And every time he's about to tell me like how to make it journalism, Evan would be like, what's your call? Or like, whatever, just keep interrupting. I'm like, Evan, just let me like figure out how to make it in sports journalism. And that will always be like tied in my mind whenever I see a Chris Vanini thing.
I think he might remember you. I don't know.
I highly doubt it. That was many years ago.
You don't think he remembers playing poker with people?
I think that
like probably remembers the experience at least.
Maybe. I think that most like national writers and writers at The Athletic or Sports Illustrated or wherever, I think that young student journalists at sporting event wants tips on how to make it is not a unique experience for them. So I doubt that it was a particularly memorable experience, but yeah.
Yeah. All right. So yeah, for my top three, just kind of go back. I don't like let's start with the first one and say like no one can be this person. So it's like I want to like striving to be this person, but it's Lee Corso. I just love Lee Corso.
You don't want to be Lee Corso, man? No one could ever be Lee Corso.
I feel like he just is college football. Saturdays and the Saturday mornings, and he is college football. So Lee Corso I have on there. And then Kirk Herbstreit's another one. I've always really liked Kirk Herbstreit.
Really? That's going to be a controversial one with our audience.
I thought it might be.
Yeah.
I thought it might be, which I kind of think is dumb.
I've always liked Kirk Herbstreit. I don't agree with a lot of what he says sometimes.
And I don't either. Like he and I probably we don't have the same views on college football all the time, but I just really respect his work and analysis and the way he got to where he is. Like I read his book, and I think that's part of the reason why I'm like so much more like appreciative of his journey and like how he's made it to where he has. And also I've heard one time like just I don't know, I think on a different non like media football level, like I've heard he's like a really, really good dad.
Yeah.
Like I remember there was a story that he told about like because he's always all over the place. He will fly two places probably on Saturdays most of the time, fly from game day to the game that he's calling. But I heard him tell one time on a podcast it was on a podcast that he would want to be at his kids' Friday football games on Friday nights. So he would like be at their games on a Friday night, fly, like take a red eye to be at game day and then take another flight for that night. So I don't know, he's just a very dedicated father. So I found that I find that really admirable.
I've also read Kirk Herbstreit's book because Bailey and I are just like that when it comes to college football. But yeah, so you heard it here first. Years from now, when the Pegasus Podcast has become the premier college football podcast in America, Bailey will be flying from, our on-site podcast back home to see his kids. So
a very weird idea. The Pegasus Podcast suddenly becoming just a college football podcast.
No, I see. In my head, it wasn't even that. It was just that there are so many UCF fans that a UCF podcast has become the premier. I'm telling you, man. I've said this before, and I stand by it. I don't think it's propaganda. I think if UCF is successful at the Power 5 level or Power 4 level, or whatever the hell we're calling it now, I think that their fan base is going to be like an Ohio State size fan base in 30 or 40 years, because they're just churning out so many freaking alumni. I mean, and people lock onto a winner. We've seen that happen in the last few years. So I truly believe that long term.
And then the last one
I truly believe UCF will have a huge fan base. I don't truly believe that the Pegasus Podcast will become the premier podcast in America. I feel like
I believe that. The last one's RG3. I love the way he approaches what he does. Like he has fun with it. Like college football is fun. So like I feel like some people might find like some of his sayings or like some of the things he says goofy, but I just like that he approaches it from a fun standpoint. And I think he's really entertaining to listen to. And that's kind of like, I don't say like I model our podcast after him, but it's just like I want us to be both informational and like engaging, but also like funny, and we're just hanging out. And that's kind of how you get the feeling when he's calling a game. It's just like, yeah, he's having fun. He's really enjoying what he's doing, which I really like. So
no, he has been probably the first like breakout announcer star in college football of the last few years. Like he's become one of those guys for me where it's like I will watch a game that like I'll be turning to a game more often than I would have otherwise because he's calling it. Like I just and we haven't had someone break out like that in a little bit in college football at this point. We need more of that. He's awesome. He's so entertaining. We got like 15 iconic moments from him covering the UCF Cincinnati game this year. I mean, just so many different things. What was it? The Hyphen Brothers? From him losing his wedding ring in the waters of Spirit Splash. I just know
he's even fantastic. Going into the water at Spirit Splash. Like it's just like
honestly.
I want to see more of that from like him, just not like at UCF, not even particularly at UCF, but just like everywhere. Like I just think it's cool that he like ingrained himself in the culture for just the weekend that he's there covering the game.
And that's what announcers should do. And there are announcers that are good at this and are bad at this. And it's true. It's you want to, like what you said, you want to ingrain yourself in that school's culture. You want to do more than show up and say, hi, I am here to call a football game. These are the two teams. Like you want to be able to tell the story of that team and their season in that one game. And it's like some announcers really care about doing that. Some are a little more not, and it's different styles, but I'm very much in favor of the ones who learn the campus, learn the team, learn the stories, and can really, it's tough work, but really give a strong broadcast off of it,
Yeah, and it is a warm. Like if I tune into a game and I don't like. Sometimes I'll know what game he's calling. Like if I tune into a game and he's calling, I'm like, oh yes, like he's calling this game. Yeah. So yeah, really like him.
We spent way longer on this than I was anticipating. Yeah. It's only the first half of the question. This is
the other part of this question. It'll be quicker, I think. It was basically I don't actually have the word for word. It was basically asking us which of us spend more time on Twitter.
Yeah, pull out your phone, go to settings, go to screen time, go to see all activity, and go to Twitter. What's your average time on the app, and who spends more time on Twitter?
Okay, so settings, screen time. I probably should have pulled this up ahead of time. All activity. Okay, so we're doing daily average?
I guess, yeah.
All right. Wait, should I go first or do you want to go first?
You go first.
2 hours and 2 minutes.
Buddy, you're double mine, and I would not have guessed that.
I mean, there's a reason why, I think, especially lately.
Okay.
Just because of one of the jobs that I do is covering the Bucks for Pewter Report, and when I'm out at practice, I just have Twitter up the whole time. So that's like 2 or 3 hours a day of just.
My average was an hour and 10 minutes.
I was at an hour and 10 minutes.
Yep.
Yeah, I was at practice today, and my screen time on Twitter today is 2.5 hours. But I feel like I haven't been on it much outside of when I was at practice this morning. So
I feel like that's fair because you do cover double the football teams I cover. So I guess it makes sense that Twitter would be double for you. So that
it does still surprise me though. I don't know if that says what that says about me and like my view on how much time you spend on Twitter, but I feel like you're on Twitter like way more than me.
Yeah, I almost feel like that's a lie. Like I think about my day. I guess one thing I do is like which I don't know. I might just be describing how people use apps. I don't know, but like when I log in, like when I go into Twitter, like I scroll and then I kill the app immediately. Like the second I'm done, the app's gone. Like I don't even just leave it. Like, you know how you can like, I don't even know what it's called when you like totally shut off an app.
Like when you like swipe out of it?
Yeah, I always do that. Yeah. Like I don't know why.
Oh yeah, I usually do.
So it's like I feel like I'm on Twitter all the time, but I'm on Twitter all the time in like weird 30-second bursts throughout the day. So I don't know, but I don't even know. Like I lived in a normal person. Is an hour and 10 minutes a lot? Like I'm curious from some of our listeners. Like I know some of you aren't spending a lot of time on Twitter because again, I think our number one complaint over the last 2.5 years is why do you talk about Twitter so much? But yeah, that's interesting. I would not have guessed that you would have been ahead of me.
Me neither, and especially not by that margin. And
yeah, well, like you said, listen, this is also going to look different once college football starts. Like, let's be real. That's going to dramatically change things for both of us. But
especially when you're in the press box tweeting and I'm not. Well, I don't know. We'll see if I have better service in the stadium now.
That's not going to help you because I tweet from my laptop when I'm in the press box. So my iPhone screen time will stay. Yeah.
Yeah, I rarely go on Twitter on like desktop or on the desktop version. Like I'm usually on my phone. So interesting. Okay. I had something else to say. I don't remember what it was. So let's just move on to what we actually are here to talk about. We're starting with the 12 for 12, the last two installments of it that UCF did on the 25-game win streak, and just some of our takeaways and things we didn't know. And first of all, it was just incredible to read. Like when the first one came out about the 2017 season, I was like, it sent me back into like just a nostalgic feeling of just like, all right, let me pull up all these game highlights from 2017 and go back and watch all these night flicks and just kind of sit here for a second and appreciate that team and that like coaching staff and just everything. And then I was like, all right, can the 2018 one like drop now? Like I really wanted it in that moment. And the 2018 one came out and it was really, really good work. But just, I don't know, where do you want to start with all this?
Well, it's actually funny because 2017 was, I consider to be like my peak of covering UCF. That 2017, that win streak, 2017, 2018, because just I was a student at that time. So I didn't have a job when I was in college. So I never missed an access. I was at everything. We're covering all kinds of stuff. Like, so it was like, I just felt like as far as like in the know of what was going on, that was probably the peak for me of like feeling like, oh yeah, like you're also, I was like 20. So I just felt like I was a badass. Like, I was like, I know everything going on with the UCF football team. There was stuff in there I'd never heard in my life. Like I was just like, I'd never even heard a hint of or anything. And I think one of the biggest ones is we knew that, and I think it's going to vary by fan, but I think it was largely out there how the whole Milton almost left after 16. I think we all knew that. We all knew he went back to Hawaii. We all knew that it was tough for him and it wasn't clear if he was going to come back. Kalubi Ali dropped. I'd never heard that they held a vote of whether to let him come back. And Kalubi Ali said it was very close. And that just opened up the new greatest hypothetical in UCF history to me is what if the team kicked off Mackenzie Milton before 2017, before the season where he would establish himself as arguably the greatest player in program history.
That's the thing is like to varying degrees, like, yeah, we knew that he was like in a bad place after his freshman year and maybe he was going to transfer or leave. But I didn't realize how close I didn't realize how long he was in Hawaii. Like I think they said fall practice had started, right?
So
wasn't back.
I remember that he wasn't back. He missed. I know. I don't know if I remember that he wasn't back for fall. I know he missed all of the I know he missed all of the summer workouts and all that. Yeah, and that was a big deal at the time. And that was when it was like at the time, like, oh, he might not be coming back. But you also have to like go back and look at that through the lens of the summer of 2017. That wasn't like I remember the attitude being like, oh, that would suck. Like it was, it's like Milton come off a true freshman season that was really up and down. There was potential, but you never know. And it's just, but to know that they literally held a vote and that he was gone, he was back. And I get it. Like I understand as a teammate, I can understand how someone would have maybe not wanted him back after that when your quarterback's supposed to be your leader. Now, the flip side of that is we've all known and heard about how the team treated him pretty badly that first season. We know the fan base treated him pretty badly. He got booed off the field at the Cure Bowl. That's long been talked about, but that was pretty shocking of just like, there's some alternate universe out there where what would 2017 have been? Because who would have been the starter? I guess Vedral. I think Vedral was technically QB too. So that's a whole different world. I mean, that's crazy to even think about.
It is. It's really wild. Trying to think what else.
I have a few other things.
I know there was a couple. There's another thing with Mackenzie was just how hurt he always was.
Yeah, that was a big one. He talks about how he dislocated his shoulder in overtime of the conference title game. Never heard that in my life. No idea that. And he talks about how he said that it affected him in the Peach Bowl. And we talked about the first half of the Peach Bowl. We're like, why can't this kid throw? Like he's been so good all year and just can't.
Missing wide open receivers and just like his everything, like every highlight from that first half was him being able to run, which like saved UCF basically.
Which that Trey Neal pick obviously is already a huge moment in UCF history. But when you look at that through, if he hadn't gotten that pick, if Memphis scored there, they would have had to keep going in overtime with a quarterback who had just dislocated his throwing shoulder. This is why it was frustrating to me when for a few years, and I feel like we're finally out of it, that the expectation was undefeated every year, because you don't get to just go undefeated. Going undefeated is so damn hard. And I feel like one of the coolest things about those articles they put out was like just really showing that it's a lot of it is luck. There are just some stupid things that have to go your way. Like if that vote goes a little differently, Mackenzie Milton's off the team. They don't go undefeated. If Trey Neal doesn't get that pick and Mackenzie Milton has to play the rest of that time in overtime on a title game with a dislocated shoulder, they probably don't win that game. They talk about SMU with the defense getting all hyped up and dancing to the music from the crowd, and Frost wants them to stop, and Shander says let them do it. It's just there's so many little moments that build to it, and it was just really cool to kind of reflect back on and look at all, like, just from a sort of inside perspective. I mean, that was a very, very special time.
That Frost and Shenander thing is like such a, like, it's an intangible thing, but it's like, what if he had told them to stop?
I seriously was going to say, like, do they still win that game if Frost tells the defense to, if you know what we're talking about, if you didn't read it, which you guys should go read these if you hadn't. It was talked about that when it was that critical drive with that where SMU has the ball and UCF's defense is on the field, and it's at SMU, and the stadium starts playing. I think it was Usher, right? And UCF's players just start dancing to it on the field, and SMU's guys are like, "What the hell is happening?" And Frost wanted to tell them to stop because he was freaked out. That was the week where his wife was going into labor at any point. And they had the plane ready for him and all that. And Shenander was like, "No, like let them do this. Let them have fun." And I told you, I think I texted you at the time, my new theory for what went wrong at Nebraska for Frost was he started letting that voice win, the voice that told him, tell players to stop this or whatever. But I honestly,
even the whole thing, hold on once, like even the whole
ahead.
thing about how hard it is to go undefeated, like the whole Frost's wife going into labor situation, like imagine if he did have to miss that game. Like again, like that had to just, like, the timing ended up working out.
And he said that he called a terrible game because he just his head wasn't there. But my other favorite Frost tidbit from it was how when he was doing double duty, where he was, which I don't know if I fully processed how weird that was when you look back on that. Frost was just straight up UCF's head coach and Nebraska's head coach at the same time for a month, and everyone just agreed to do that. But he talks about in the article, Frost does, that when he got back for their first bowl practice, that it was supposed to be a pads practice and the team comes out not in pads, and they're all just pissed. And it's like, you left us and they're in no mood. And Frost said he just ran them and just made it like brutal, and then just sat them down afterwards and kind of chewed into them and was like, here's what I'm doing. I'm flying back and forth. I was in California this morning recruiting. Like, I'm here for you. Like, let's do this, and lock the team back in. And like, I actually weirdly, like, I think my main takeaway from finishing, especially the first part, I apologize, I just dropped a ring light if you heard that noise. I still, for those of you who are listening to the video version, I would talk about I fiddle with stuff. I still am. I've just gotten better about doing it like out of the
under the camera.
Yeah, so you can't see it. But then I drop it and it kind of ruins the effect. But Frost was an awesome coach. And obviously things worked out for UCF after he left. They're in the Power 5 now. They've won a conference title since he left. They've been to a Fiesta Bowl since he left. They've had 2 top 25 seasons since he left. They've 9 wins or more many times. It's been good. It's been fine. But when you read those, what stands out is, one, how good of a coach he was at UCF, and 2, how much he loved UCF. I mean, and honestly, when you read the second part, that doesn't come across from Heupel. Like, it really doesn't. And I'm not saying that Heupel didn't, but it's like, Heupel coached at UCF, and that was that. Frost believed in UCF, and it's just hard to not think about what could have been if he'd stayed. And I think it's something Frost probably thinks a lot about too.
Yeah, and you got even further insight into just how difficult of a decision that was for him to leave, and the timing just was really bad timing. Like if you look at it from like a different perspective, because like he didn't want to leave, and when that opportunity came up, like he had to, obviously, with like everything that was going on with his dad wanting to see him coach at Nebraska, and like that was, maybe that shot doesn't come back around, like who knows. But yeah, you can like tell, like he absolutely loved UCF and believes in UCF's program. And I'm not saying like Heupel doesn't believe in UCF, but it was like Heupel talked about it much more like, yeah, I appreciated that stop in my journey. Like it was just like, it was a stop. It wasn't like, I don't know. I didn't feel like,
and honestly,
they're just different personalities too. So like it might not
different
even
personalities, but it's also, you look at where they're at now. I mean, Frost is out of coaching and failed at the stop he went to, which was, his home basically. And Heupel is having success at one of the big brands of college football. So maybe that's part of it too. Heupel's living in the moment. Frost isn't. That could be part of it too. But I just found myself, as I'm reading that, I'm just like, God, I would kill for the timing to work out that whenever Gus decides to retire, Frost could come back in. And I know that there were all the rumors about whether Frost was in the running for the OC job this past year, whatever. And if that is the case, and if he was, I understand why that was not the hire that was made. And I think Hinshaw's a good choice. But you just find yourself hoping that can happen at some point,
Yeah. And then I know like there's going to be people that are like, no, like you don't want to bring him back. You look what he did at Nebraska. But I just feel like everything that he did at UCF, like he was just so much more suited to coach UCF than he was Nebraska.
I've said this before, that hire, it's like teams got to stop hiring guys for completely different situations. Like nothing about the UCF situation had anything to do with what was going on in Nebraska, and just saying, well, he won games here, so he'll win games there. It's just not the way it works. I think what you said, he's very fitted for what UCF likes to do. Nebraska was a whole different ballgame, and probably not one he was, well, we know now, not one that he was positioned to be able to right that ship, you know?
As long as he, like, I'm just saying, that's the thing. It's like you do wonder, like, some of the personality shifts that he had while he was at Nebraska and his different, like, philosophies and approaches to things. As long as, like, it's not the Nebraska Frost, like that attitude. So I don't remember all of really that whole tenure, but there was like different things where it was just like
there were a few
like the same guy.
It seemed like he was trying to be a hard ass, which isn't really ever what he was at UCF. He was kind of the player's friend, and I think that was part of the problem. And actually, the Athletic, God, like 6 or 7 months ago now, I don't know if we even talked about in the pod, they spoke to a few coaches anonymously from the Nebraska staff and were like, what happened there? And one of them had this quote that they basically said, UCF already, when we got there, they already had the talent. And basically those players were just looking for someone to love them and tell them, let's have fun and let's make football fun again. And then they say they get to Nebraska and the locker room's just a mess. It's just like, and that's the whole, hey, I'm your pal, like, let's go have fun together. That doesn't work when the locker room's a dumpster fire. It just doesn't. Yeah. So especially when you're having to make tough calls, when the team doesn't have talent and you're going to have to be kind of running some guys off the roster and bringing new guys in. I mean, it's a totally different vibe.
Yeah. I don't know if you have more. There's the only other.
I have one final thought, but you can go first. And then
It was basically, I think we talked about it a little bit last week at the end of the podcast, just the culture and the leadership on those teams and how it feels like there hasn't really been that since then. I'm getting this weird, and I don't know, this maybe is just a thing, but I'm getting a feeling that there is a little bit more of that this year. Like, it just feels like these guys are a little bit more established as leaders, and hopefully the culture is better. And I think we talked a little bit about how, like, it's just different with the transfer portal and all this, just the era that we're in. But I think, like, UCF needs some of that back if they're going to play at the level they played at back then.
I mean, yeah, and it's tough because it's not to say that I've ever thought in the last few years that UCF had a culture problem. It just felt like those leaders from 17 and 18, your Shaquems, your Pat Jasinskis, all those guys graduated and new guys didn't really necessarily step up. I don't know how much of that you want to rest on the feet of Dylan Gabriel, because that's long been documented that he came in as the superstar and didn't really handle that in the most mature way off the field. But it just felt like that's been lacking. And it's felt like it's been lacking in the first couple of years of Malzahn's era too, of not that the culture is bad, but just who are the guys that the team is going to rally around and are going to tell them to fight back from adversity. And I think there's been a hint of complacency. I haven't seen the chip on the shoulder from the last couple of years.
That edge.
No, and I don't know if that's the makeup of the roster. I don't know if when you transition, so you've got guys who are coming down from P5, if you just don't have that same edge, if you're not, I mean, the 2017 and 2018 teams were stacked with guys who were under-recruited, and we're pissed about that. And hasn't been, and I'm fine with UCF elevating its roster, but it does feel like you lose that heat a little bit when you don't necessarily have that. So I don't know. I hope this year is different. I almost wonder if that's not even replicable in the transfer portal area for any school, but what I like is now you've got guys who've been here for multiple years. John Rice Plumlee's been here for multiple years. Alec Holler's been here forever. Lokahi's been here forever. Like, you have captains who are Celiscar, but
Jason Johnson even.
Celiscar's been here since what, like 2019, 2020?
Yeah.
2020, I think. I think that was his breakout year. But that's what I'm saying. Guys who have been here for years. And that's the difference, is it's hard when your team captains are a bunch of guys who, don't have a long history of the team or haven't played together. So hopefully this year will be better. We will see. Time will tell. I also think it's easy to have a good culture when you're winning. So that helps too. But my one quick thing, and then we'll actually get into current UCF and all that stuff, is my one final thought was I absolutely loved Josh Heupel forgetting that he started Mac against East Carolina. Josh Heupel has a quote about the conference title game in 2018 and talked about how hard it was for Mac, who had never started a game before, to suddenly be thrown in there. And I don't know. How do you forget
He started
that?
A game like a month before.
How do you, I'm actually asking, how do you as a coach forget that? Like, that's a whole game that you game planned for and worked out. Like, how do you forget that you started him for? I was surprised by that, but this is going to sound so harsh because I know he's having success at Tennessee, but as much as reading the first part of that series made me nostalgic for Frost, reading the second part made me like, I don't miss Heupel at all. I just don't.
And it does go, we don't have to go back in circles, but it does go back to the, like, you can just tell that there was a mutual, like, Frost loved UCF and UCF loved Frost. Heupel, it does now feel like, he was just the guy that came after Frost. And they had 2018, obviously. I'm not taking it away from that, but it was like things had obviously soured by 2020. And when he was gone, there wasn't a ton of people who were like, oh man, we're gonna miss that guy.
Yeah, and
I loved his personality and his bubbly. Just I don't know. No one's like, oh, miss that guy.
And I don't want to go revisionist history because I would take a lot of heat because I don't know if I'd go so far as say as I was pro Heupel, but I was anti-firing Heupel. Remember for 2020, everyone wanted him gone, and I was pretty vocally against that. It was largely from a logistics perspective. I didn't understand how they could ever pay a buyout, especially during COVID. And I also didn't think that what had happened in 2020 warranted a firing, and I still stand by that. But I also am thrilled with the way things worked out. It's just everything happened. Everything worked out for the best. Even if the Big 12 invite still happens and all that, if Heupel's still the coach, I just don't buy they have 9 4-star recruits right now. I don't buy that.
And I don't want to act like he had no redeeming. Obviously, like they were successful, and he
offense was fun as hell.
Heck of a play. Yeah, he was a heck of a play caller, and the offense was extremely fun. It was just there were so many problems, and he wasn't always like the easiest person to like listen to, so it was just kind of like he didn't really do himself any favors in terms of like connecting to the university and all that stuff. So, and
that was a problem for him at previous stuff. We're just like we're going. This is what I'm talking about. This is what the outline's for. We're going down the rabbit hole, but Josh. I also my one closing thought is I also do want to say that part of that specifically with those articles is Frost is out of the game, so can probably talk a little more freely. Josh Heupel is the coach at another university right now, so I think that Frost was able to more freely reminisce than someone who is currently working for another school.
It's almost like how much of, I don't think it was not like genuine, but like Frost also could be angling for a way back in eventually.
I believe so. I think that we all understand that Frost would love to get back to UCF, and I'd love for him to get back to UCF. So I texted you after I read it. I was like, here's what needs to happen. Scott Frost needs to go get an OC job somewhere and do well, but not too well where he get a head coaching job and just bide his time for 4 or 5 years until Gus is ready to call it quits. Then he'll take over. Will that happen? No. But
I have a parallel that no one is gonna like. I don't even want to say. I just on the podcast because no one's gonna relate to it.
Go ahead.
It's a Tottenham thing where they fired Mauricio Pochettino in 2019. They just were a mess for a few years, and he wanted to come back all along, and he waited, and they never called him, and then he ended up at Chelsea, their rival. So I don't know. It feels like almost a little bit similar, just because. It does feel like he's destined to come back one day, but like also, would you be surprised if he didn't? Not really.
I can't wait for 2025 when newly named head coach Darren Hinshaw hires Scott Frost as his OC. It's gonna be crazy.
An odd timeline, but yeah. All right, we'll get into actual current day UCF 2023. The season is 2 weeks away, 2.5 weeks away. This Thursday will be 2 weeks until kickoff, and we're getting dangerously close.
We are dangerously close. Oh, it's dangerous.
I don't know why it's dangerous, but it is.
Because they're going to only beat Kent State like 31-17, and people are going to go insane. So it's dangerously close.
Yeah. So we have some questions that UCF will still have to answer heading into 2023, things that are yet to be determined. Whether those get answered in fall camp or as the season begins, we'll see. But we'll start with the backup quarterback job, which is kind of like, I don't want to say it's under the radar because people are talking about it a little bit, but it's like JRP is so obviously like entrenched as QB1 that it was like, oh, okay, we don't have to really talk about the quarterback position. But as we've discussed on this podcast multiple times, he is bound to get hurt.
Yeah,
at some
that's
point.
The thing is this is an important topic. Like this isn't your typical, who cares who the second string quarterback is. This matters because he is going to get hurt.
Even if he gets just banged up in a game and he has to come out for a series, like who's the quarterback that goes in?
Exactly.
Right now, like the way they're talking, we've had like this conversation where it's like it seems like no one's talking about Timmy McClain. And that's like turned a complete 180 lately, where it's just like he's made so many strides, he looks great, and he's really, really kind of like come into his own. So I don't know if that was like a summer development or what that was, but it sounds like Timmy has that edge right now. And then almost like Dylan Risk has like the job behind him, or like is kind of fighting him for it, because they're saying Xavier Williams just needs time to adjust to the offense and kind of come into his own. But it does seem like it's going to be Timmy.
Yeah, I mean, Hinshaw's presser today, which I have to say, something amazing has happened. And it's UCF hiring Darren Hinshaw, because I don't know why, I don't know how, but Darren Hinshaw actually gives real information in his press conferences. There's no sound bites. There's no equivocating. He just straight up, you'll say, what do you think of this player? He'll be like, well, here's what I think. And he'll just tell you. And I don't know if Gus just hasn't tuned into his pressers yet and has realized this is happening. We'll put it into it soon, but it's been pretty extraordinary actually. And it's crazy to be getting real info out of pressers, but today he pretty much said it's down to Dylan and Timmy for second string. And I think that we can all pretty safely say it's going to be Timmy. And I think that my biggest takeaway from what, Hinshaw's been saying and everything about that is that we've been talking about, I think I even said a few weeks ago on the pod that I'm very confident that UCF's 2024 starter is not on this roster. I don't feel as firmly about that with the way Hinshaw's talked about the way that Timmy's improved, and with the just pure joy and excitement he brings up whenever he discusses Risk. It sounds like Risk has just come in and looked the part as obviously I don't like buy that he's in any position to really play or be good right now, because that's just not the way true freshmen work. But it sounds like he went from someone who I considered sort of an afterthought to someone who, with a year in the system, could maybe challenge for the job next year once JRP is gone. So that's exciting. What's not exciting is me drafting Xavier Williams in our transfer draft, because, oh my Lord, Darren Hinshaw pretty much just said he's not good, and has said so several times now. So that that's rough too. I know Gus will, like, whenever you ask Gus about a specific player, how so-and-so, he'll be like, oh, we love them. They're fighting. We're excited for the season. And then you ask Hinshaw, you're like, how's Xavier Williams? And he's like, he's just not there. And it's fantastic.
Let me tell you for the next 2 minutes why he's not there yet.
And he goes on his Williams answer went on for like 2.5 minutes explaining how he's just not, and he was like, I'm working with him, but he had some, like, he said like something like he's just treading water or something. I forget what the exact quote was, but on the flip side, he was listing all the ways that Timmy has improved and how Timmy's ball secure. He said that he was just sort of improvising in spring and running around doing his own thing, and now he's really nailing down what he's supposed to do. And that's exciting because I love Timmy McClain. We talked about this. He was awesome at USF, and he was the only USF player I've ever gone publicly to say I think this guy's awesome, like, while he was at USF. And I think it'd be great if he is in the running to be the starter next year. So I think it's safe to say that he'll be second string, because I really doubt they'd hand that to a true freshman. And we'll probably maybe see him a little bit this year in garbage time, or when John Rice Plumlee gets hurt, and maybe that can set him up to be the guy in 2024. I don't know.
Yeah, I again, going back, I agreed with you. That was like, it didn't seem like UCF's quarterback of the future was on the roster. And I think the unknown of that was still kind of just like, what is Darren Hinshaw's like offense, and like what is he looking for in a quarterback? And maybe, Dylan fits it more than he would have fit a Gus system, because it did when Gus recruited him. It was like,
it was a little weird.
He's not the type of quarterback that Gus usually plays with. And maybe we're seeing now like he's more suited for what Darren Hinshaw wants to do. So I hope so. I hope it's Dylan, or I hope it's Timmy next year, because it would be nice to go into the offseason and not really have like, we need a starting quarterback, like a surefire guy.
It's so impossible to predict this stuff now, obviously, but I still feel like there's a decent shot they'll go get a transfer anyway.
Probably.
Because that's just what you do in this era. I mean, but it's just the idea of, just from what we've heard out of fall, which again, it's a couple weeks and we might just be way over exaggerating, but it does sound like it's gone from, oh man, they might have nothing behind JRP, to, hey, maybe Timmy's in position with another year that he really could be an option in 2024. And we don't have to freak out about, what the hell are they going to do after this season at quarterback?
Yeah, and he has 3 years of eligibility left, because he redshirted
last freshman in 21, redshirt. Yeah, he still have 3 years left.
Yeah.
So
he could two after this year. So
can't wait for 2027 or 2026 when he's still their starting quarterback.
Yeah, it would be great.
Not going to happen.
That would be, no, I mean, that would be a good thing, but it's not going to happen.
Riley Trujillo is going to come in and just blow everyone away in camp next year. It's going to be crazy.
EJ Colson, though. Is that his name?
Yeah,
Did EJ. That right?
EJ Colson. Forgot about him too. Right, UCF. Right, I forgot. UCF has a 4-star quarterback committed for 2025. My stance on that is, as I said before, is 2025 is not a real year. So that's exciting. That's exciting if he sticks, but 2025 is simply not a real year. So
yeah. All right, we'll move on. And then the second one's like a little bit more, obviously that was important because of the nature of the way John Rice Plumlee plays the game. But this one's like actually the starting group is, how will the secondary shape up and how effective will the group be? We've kind of been all over the board with the secondary, because like going into the offseason, or like at some point in the offseason, I was like, seems like they have a lot of like decent like options. I guess some good options.
They just brought in so many. It was like, how can you not put together a good group?
And then in the spring, it was like, well, then they went and got DeCorian Patterson. It was like, all right, maybe like they just went and probably got their cornerback 1 off of the transfer portal during spring ball. So maybe they saw something that's it's not going to go well. And then like the last few practices, everyone's like, the DBs are insane. Like they're just making all these highlight plays, and who knows whether that's a good or bad thing. Because again, it's like, it's good for the DBs, it's bad for the quarterback. So
there's no good news from a scrimmage. Everything that happens is bad. Every single thing, because it means someone screwed up. So it's all bad. But I don't even know what to think about the secondary. I find myself more worried about them than any other position group at this point. And it's not even, which might be stupid, and it's not even, like because I think they'll be bad. It's just I genuinely have no idea what to expect from them. Like they're just a total wild card to me at this point.
That's a good teaser for next week's podcast.
Yes,
right before the season, we always rank our rank the UCS position groups based on our confidence level in them. So.
Might have just ruined that. How specific? But do we do? I don't remember how we do that. Do we do secondary or do we do safeties and corners?
DBs? I think we just do DBs.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
DBs. So yeah, I mean, if you were to predict, like, I feel like we have a. I don't know if we have a good idea if this is just an educated guess of like who's going to start week 1 in secondary, but it'd be Patterson. Who's the other outside corner that I'm like not remembering? Is
Corey Thornton?
Corey Thornton is what I'm thinking of.
Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe
Corey Thornton. It'll probably be
Brandon Adams?
This is just Brandon Adams. This is me just absolutely reading into stuff I shouldn't be reading into. But like in the very rare scrimmage footage we've gotten, when the ones have been out there, it's been Corey Thornton. So
yeah. And
we saw him with that breakup against Javon that UCF was really excited about when they posted. That to me looked like a severely underthrown ball. But I guess Corey Thornton maybe.
And then at safety, what, Gyro Wilson?
Yeah, Gyro Wilson will.
Jordan Mask?
I don't know about maybe Jordan Mask.
I don't know.
That's where you lose me, I guess.
Nakai?
Well, Nakai is going to be in the whole like
the slot.
Yeah, so I'm not sure. I honestly this is okay. See, this conversation is why I'm worried about it because I just don't know. Like
Quadric Bullard is still there.
Quadric Bullard's still there. It's like every position I can give you a pretty solid rundown of who's going to start and why I think they're going to start, and the secondary is just kind of like, oh, there will be guys out there. I mean, we'll see what happens.
Well, then who was it? Wasn't it Gus that said like Braden Marshall, true freshman Braden Marshall, was like going to help them this year?
So okay, I will say off of that, and this is where you have to like sort of be aware of how.
Oh, was it just a direct like?
He was asked specifically about Braden Marshall, so it wasn't like he went out of his way to bring him up. So I don't know, but he did end it with he's going to help us this year. So but I don't know. Does that mean he's going to help on special teams? Like I don't know. We've heard good stuff about Braden Marshall. It does sound like he's one of the true freshmen who's performing the best, but I don't know if he's in position as far as true freshmen go to get on the field as fast as some of the others, just because of the position and how many guys there are competing there. Let me tell you, though, the Henderson twins, and I don't know, like this is what I'm saying. There's so many options, and that's why part of me is like, it wouldn't surprise me if, well, the depth chart will lie, so it doesn't matter. But it wouldn't surprise me if when we actually see the Kent State game and the Boise State game, we see some group out there that we're just like, what the hell? Like that really wouldn't surprise me if that happens because there's so many options.
I'd say they do release a depth chart, right?
They do, but it's not accurate. Like
you get the or
something that Adam Schefter had never seen before last week.
A lot of people hadn't. That was a thing. People were like, I was like listening to podcasts that were like, oh yeah, like the Bucks all of a sudden they had like an or on like.
Okay, so you tell me, because I don't really follow NFL. Is that a college thing? I always thought that was just a depth chart thing.
It must be, because I was like, I feel like I've seen that all the time, but maybe it's just because I've seen it at the college level. Because like so many people, it was enough of a thing where like Twitter started talking about it. They were like, or, and I was like, yeah, that's on every depth chart.
UCF will straight up tell you they have 5 starting running backs. They'll just be like, it'll be RJ Harvey or DeMarcus Bowman or Mark Anthony Richards or Johnny Richards. Like they've done that. Wasn't it even with quarterback at one point? They tried that. I can't remember. No, it was with backup. It was backup. It was yeah. I don't remember who it was. But I remember they had a starter and then the backup quarterback was player. I don't remember what year that was.
Was it Mac or Gabriel?
I think no. I don't remember. I
mean, would they have done? I don't remember when they released the depth chart. Like, when did they do that? Because was last year? Was the starter to say John Rice Plumlee or Mikey Keene, or was the job already decided?
I don't think they released a depth chart until we knew. Okay. But again, like I'll tell you right now, I know we love to analyze the depth chart. Like it's a lie. Don't believe it. It's a lie.
Yeah.
So.
I'm gonna. We'll go back to this other question, but since you said that UCF will list 5 starting running backs. Let's talk about the running backs. How will the running back position be utilized? Because we know Gus Malzahn in the past has liked to use kind of a featured back. Last year we saw Bowser and RJ. It seemed like RJ.
The thing about last year, and this might be really overly critical of the play calling last year, but it felt less like they were featuring both RJ and Bowser and more like they just couldn't make up their mind. Like it felt like there wasn't necessarily like there were similar situations. Like it wasn't like, other than very specifically Wild Bowser, like you would both see them in various like situations. You'd see them both used for the same situation. So it's almost like they just couldn't decide. It almost felt like RJ was tugging away the RB1 role from Bowser over the course of the year. So I don't know what Hinshaw is going to do here. I do know that they have a ton of depth at this position, and I feel like that's going to force their hand a little bit. And it's even more depth than I even thought, because we all know about Harvey and Bowman. Every time you ask a player who's had a big play in practice, who had a big play in the scrimmage, they bring up Bowman. We all know what RJ is. I just mixed his name together and said Harjay instead of RJ or Harvey, but I meant RJ Harvey. And then behind him, Johnny Richardson's randomly been getting a lot of praise, and Darren Hinshaw today, because someone asked him about who's the guy who's going to factor into those situations they would use Bowser for, those 3rd and 2s, and he said, again, Hinshaw just liking to talk. He said he wasn't sure who yet. He said he knows it wouldn't be Johnny. And he said that the reasoning was that Johnny's just so explosive and they have different situations for him. And he brought up a situation where it was a 3rd and 21 and he got 24 yards, and that it's his speed and they want to. And then for the last 2 weeks now, everyone keeps unprompted bringing up MAR. Like MAR is back from the dead and just being discussed again. So I'm excited too, but we literally did not see him ever last year. And now Gus and Hinshaw and a couple players have all brought him up. So how many, right? RJ, Bowman, Johnny, MAR, Jordan McDonald's also in there somewhere. Yes. Like I just, it's insane. So I have to think it's going to be more of a committee approach, because you're not going to just leave these really good guys on the bench. You're not going to do it.
They can't afford to just be like, all right, RJ, you get all the carries, or DeMarcus, you get all the carries. Like, it's going to have to be some sort of split, but like, I just don't know how deep that split's going to go. I mean, I think it's majority of it's going to be split between RJ and Bowman.
I would have to think
the top 2 guys.
We should. Okay, let's make a prediction right now, or a bet, or not a bet, because we're not betting money on it, but what percent of the carries this year will be RJ and Bowman's versus the field?
Oh, so like them together versus
everyone else. What percent will be RJ and Bowman?
I don't know. I feel like I'm shooting too high, but I feel like it would be like 74.
That's a super specific number. Okay, I was thinking in the 75 to 80 range, and I don't know if that'll end up being accurate. But I don't know, because we're not counting garbage time and all that. But I don't know. It's because Johnny just never. It was like what did Gus always say last year? He's just not an every down back yet, and he's working on being an every down back. And I still probably don't think he is. But when you have that many good guys who could basically be your starter, and you have an O-line that you are maybe feeling good about cautiously. Well, not cautiously. They won't shut up about how good they feel about it. So I guess they do, but. It feels like, but then I don't know. And I'm just talking out loud, but the flip side is like, am I going to get annoyed? Like if Bowman and RJ are that good, like, is it a mistake to be taking carries away from them just because of your depth? But then again, you can't ever have like too many fresh legs. I'm bouncing. I don't even have a thought. Yeah. I don't know. I don't know what the answer is.
I don't either. It's going to be fun to watch, I think, because all of them are such good options. And I think there are going to be packages for Johnny. There are going to be some situations maybe where they do use MAR. But I do think it's very clear that RJ and DeMarcus Bowman will be the top 2, and I think they're going to get the biggest share together of the carries. So
who are we gonna think is better by the end of the season, RJ or Bowman? Predict right now.
Who do we think can be better?
Yeah. Do you think, or will it not be clear? Like, do you think that on the day of the final game of the season, if I asked a random person, or not a random person, like if I asked you who's UCF's best running back, you would be able to certainly say it's this guy?
I don't know. I don't think so. But if I say, like, I was leaning yes, I think so, but I wouldn't be able to tell you which one. Like, I don't know. I think that's why I ended up at I don't think so, because I think, and I'm sure I'm going to be wrong about that. Someone will probably establish themselves. And
I mean, RJ's just so good and presumably will have improved that I have a hard time believing that Bowman could be better than him. But also, there's just so much hype around Bowman. I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't know. Maybe they'll both just be amazing.
The next thing is the offensive line and how the heck that's going to shape up, because there's so many guys there, and I think it's a situation where they feel better, and they've talked about how this is the deepest O-line they've ever had, this coaching staff and everybody's saying that. So it's a little different than like the secondary, because the secondary is a little bit more of a question, but they feel so good about so many of these guys. It's like they can only start 5. So who is that going to be?
Okay, let's go. Let's figure this out. Let's develop UCF's O-line. Okay, so let's start with center. It's either going to be Hayden Kittler or Drake Metcalf or Bula Schmidt. So that's where we're at for center.
I think it's going to be Metcalf.
It's going to be Metcalf, right? They're hyping up all of them, and they actually sound like Kittler being mentioned so much is a nice surprise. But like, there's a reason that after landing Bula, they went out and got someone else. It was Metcalf. I bet it'll be Metcalf. Okay, so center's Metcalf. Paule will be back at right guard, so we're set there. Mm-hmm. Marcellus Marshall gets brought up all the time, and someone said he'd been moved into guard because I think he was a tackle in the MAC.
I think so, and that's what gets so annoying. Not annoying. It is annoying. It's just I understand why they do it, and it's whatever. But the roster just for all these guys just says offensive line. So like you don't know how they're being used in practice. Of like, is he a tackle or is he a guard? We don't know until the game happens.
That's the Gus Malzahn paranoia right there. But okay, so let's put Marshall at left guard.
Okay.
And then that's where it gets interesting because I had assumed that right tackle would be Amari Kite because he was a transfer that a lot of teams were interested in. He came in from Alabama. UCF used NIL money on him, and we haven't heard much of anything about him. And I don't know if that means he's not going to start. It just means that the O-line's been discussed a lot, and we haven't heard a whole lot about him. And I don't know what to make of that.
I don't either. I would have thought all offseason that, and again, this just goes back to like we don't really know because I thought Marcellus Marshall was a tackle, so I was like, okay, well they're just going to have some way or another they're going to have Marshall and Kite as their two tackles.
Yeah,
but I don't think that's going to happen.
I think Marshall's pretty clearly going to be guard. Yeah,
Tylen Grable he's what, a left tackle?
Yes.
Does he play right tackle?
Yeah, Grable's left tackle, right? Well, I think he's played like everywhere, but I assume he'll be a left tackle.
Okay, he'll be one of the tackles. So
okay,
I don't know
I'm
who
losing
the other
track in my
is.
head. So we're saying center is Metcalf.
Yeah.
Right guard is Lokahi. Right tackle is Grable. Left guard is Marshall. And so now we're just talking about left tackle.
Left tackle. Yeah.
Do I have that all right? Okay.
I think so.
And left tackle could be, or no, I have that backwards. Left tackle is Grable. Right tackle is what we're still talking about.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Sure.
Okay. I'm going to say it again. Center is Metcalf. Right guard is Paule. Left guard is Marshall. Left tackle is Grable. Right tackle is what we're still thinking about.
Yes.
And that could be Ed Collins. It could be Paul Rubelt potentially. Or it could be Amari Kite. And this is all just it's just no one's asked about him. I don't know.
Adrian Medley, what's his deal? Is he a tackle? I can't ever remember.
He was playing here so long ago. I legitimately don't remember. He's a tackle. He's
6'5", 305. He has to be a tackle.
Yeah, he's a tackle. Okay.
Yeah.
I again want to thank UCF's roster for refusing to specify. Like it's like positionless basketball is what UCF's roster is. It's just we have offensive linemen and DBs, and that's all we have.
Yeah.
But yeah. So I don't know. I guess really just I know that the center battle is whatever was talking about. I just think it's gonna be Matt. I'd be stunned if it wasn't Metcalf, to be honest with you.
I would be surprised.
So to me, it just comes down to who's going to win that final tackle spot, and unless it's already been won and we just haven't been told. But that's what I'm curious about. But either way, whatever they decide, the fact that we're having this conversation, we're able to say which of the 8 guys who are good do we think they're going to roll with. That makes me optimistic for this year because you need that depth.
It makes me optimistic as long as it's not a like revolving door of like, oh, let's throw him out there. Let's see if it. Like,
I don't think they're going to do that.
that.
Herb Hand has never operated that way. I don't think I think they'll find a group they like and stick with it. I was thinking more just injuries and things like that. You know.
Yeah.
Because that's like we've said. That's the big difference with being the P5 level is you can put together a really good group at the top, but it's a season. Guys get banged up, guys get hurt, and if you don't have guys that can step up behind them, that's how you fall off at the P5 level, and that's what I'm worried about for UCF this year. So wherever they have depth, I'm excited about.
Yeah. Last thing we want to look at here is which freshmen can be relied on immediately, or which ones will contribute this season. I don't really know. Like I think John Walker in a rotational role, may.
He'll play. I think he's going to play meaningful reps. Is where I'd put John Walker at. I don't think he's going to start anything or be out there all the time, but.
Braden Marshall apparently sounds like he's going to play some.
Maybe. I think Randy Pittman's the big one. I think he's I think everyone's pick for freshman of the year at this point, just because he's being talked about nonstop. And I think it's also just because of the position he's at and that he gives you something really different from Holler and something potentially complementary, that there's a path there for him where there isn't necessarily for a lot of other good freshmen. Tyree Patterson is someone that's getting a lot of praise, the wide receiver. Yeah. That's a deep room, but he's being talked about a lot. So he's someone that you could maybe see at some point.
Haven Call, maybe? Because
Haven Call's got a little bit of praise.
Not a ton of depth at outside linebacker, edge rusher, whatever you want to call it. There's not a ton of depth there, so maybe him.
Big time guys we haven't really heard anything about are Isaiah Nixon and Andrew Harris, 2 of the 3 4-stars we haven't heard a word. Yeah. That doesn't mean they're busts. I want to be clear about that. Especially Andrew Harris, who from the get-go was considered a project, so that's not a surprise. But
I'm not worried about either of them at all. Like I think with Nixon, I think a lot of it will probably be just getting him in the weight room and getting him into the shape they need him in. I think that's what it is.
It's funny that it's just because I think UCF fans in general are following recruiting a lot more closely than they used to, just because UCF's in it for a lot of these big guys. But like true freshmen don't typically contribute. Like you're only going to get. I mean, last year what true freshmen contributed? Nakai
a bit.
Townsend,
Nakai probably the most.
Is that it? Cam Moore got out there a little bit, but not enough.
Yeah, more than I thought he would.
Yeah, but I mean and for as many guys.
Henderson's played a tiny bit.
Tommy Castellanos.
Yeah.
But
I forgot about him. not here anymore.
But still, and you look, and like I said, of that group, it's like Nakai played pretty sparingly. Townsend was probably number one, honestly.
It was him or Nakai. I remember Nakai being in there a lot.
Nakai was probably in there more than I'm giving him credit for. You just don't notice him as much as.
But it was one of those
Townsend's
two.
Getting touches. Yeah. So, but that's what I'm saying. It's that whole class of 15 guys, and it's like 2 or 3 that you really saw as freshmen, and we're hoping to see more this year, and we're talking about that. But so I like I said, my 2 are Randy Pittman and John Walker, and anything else from there is bonus to me. Those are the 2 guys who are names that fans will become accustomed to.
I think so. And I think it's what's kind of fun about it is like, some like they didn't have a ton of contributions from the freshmen last year, but you look at like, okay, these guys are sophomores now. And that's why I'm so excited to like hopefully see the Henderson twins more and like hopefully see, well, obviously Townsend's like maybe the sophomore who everyone's talking about the most, but maybe Jordan McDonald. I don't know. There's so many running backs, so it feels difficult for.
I think Townsend. It's funny how Townsend's probably. Nakai. I mean, so how many? I mean, we know for sure Townsend and Nakai are probably going to start at this point. It sounds like Townsend's locking up that starting role as a wide receiver. Nakai will be out, so that's already 2 starters from that class. So and the Henderson twins might be in there as well. So that's exciting. I mean, that's the whole fun thing of recruiting at a high level is you get these guys who can then they're actually out there. That's what's annoying about recruiting those because you talk about these guys all through the recruiting period, then you kind of have to just like put them away in your brain for like a year before they like
It's
really
even further because it's like. Especially when it's somebody who commits so far out, it's like with EJ Colson as an example. It's like we can't even really get excited about it yet because that's so far away. And then he's going to get to campus, and I don't think we're going to be like, all right, he's going to contribute. He's going to be the starter year 1.
Well, so quarterback, it's even more. Yeah, it's just
So
I think John Walker's the exception, just because he's the highest rated recruit in program history. Everyone's so excited about him, and there are I'm realizing that I hadn't processed. There are UCF fans on social media who seem to think that he's like gonna come in and be like the best player on defense or something. Like I'd be stunned if he even started. He's a guy who's going to be in the rotation and we'll see. But it's
Ricky and Lee Hunter. Lee Hunter has been a guy who's been getting a ton of praise. So that's
great. I mean, I feel awesome about the D line, like really, really good about it. So, and I think that John Walker's great depth there, but he's a guy who he'll be this just absolute wrecker of offenses in like 2024 or 2025. And that's when he'll be this superstar, hopefully, that we're excited about. Or maybe he will have transferred to Florida State. Who knows? But either way,
don't even say it.
I apologize for saying that.
Because right as you were saying that, in my head, I pictured him like suiting up for when UCF goes and plays at Florida. And I'm like, that's going to be so exciting.
He probably will, right?
I mean... Let's not... We're not going to put that out.
This is what sucks about the transfer era. Like, I'm not going to say that I don't like the transfer portal era because that's how UCF put together a roster that might be able to go to a bowl first year in the Power 5. But it used to be like UCF signs go back years. Like they sign Gabe Davis and you see he plays lots of true freshmen. You're like, man, I can't wait to see what he's like in a couple of years. And now it's with the portal. You just can't, you have no idea. Like Tommy Castellanos transferring came out of freaking nowhere. It's just, there's just not, maybe it's because he got word of how good Dylan Riss was going to be and was like, I got to get out of here. But you just can't plan out more than a year. So it's like, what's the point?
Yeah. And it's coaches having to manage it differently too. It's like, maybe a guy isn't necessarily ready or you can't use him because you have good enough starters already, but you're like, I have to get him on the field enough
because he's going to leave
where he feels like he's part of the future. So it's kind of crazy in that way, but
which I kind of hate that because I'm like, I know people differ on this, but I'm always firmly on the side of like, and it's why I got into a lot of heat with fans and other media members in 2019 over starting Dylan because I'm always of the opinion it's like you put the best option out there, no matter what. Like I don't care about it's like it's not the NFL. Like you've got every year is independent of itself, and you have to put your best options out there. But now in the portal era, it's like if you don't. There might be this guy who is 1 year away from being really freaking good and he's going to leave because you didn't let him, I don't know, get a couple important reps in against a conference opponent or something.
Yeah, it is. It all is like there's obviously the pros and the cons. It's kind of crazy just in general. But hey, I think we can jump into the football news. But the fact that we're 2 weeks away from finding out about all of this,
so
or a lot of this
close.
And then I don't know, this is you know what I mean to say something dumb right now is when we're having this podcast next week, we'll be about a week away.
Whoa, that I hadn't thought about that. That's actually pretty crazy. That is actually pretty freaking crazy.
Because we'll be 10 days. We'll be 10 days from kickoff, presumably the next time we do the podcast.
By the way, UCF still no credentials. I don't know when they're gonna do that. But
oh man. All right, let's jump into the football news. Former UCF kicker Matthew Wright signed with the Panthers. I think I want him to stick somewhere so bad.
Why? He's really good. I don't get it. I don't understand.
Every time he's gotten a chance, he's pleased everyone. Like he's been very, very good, and he's still like having to fight to even get, a camp job. There's a lot more of the watch list things coming out. Jason Johnson, I think, is on like 4 watch lists now, which I didn't even like. I can't keep those straight ever. So it's like, I'm trying to figure out what those could be. What linebacker, defensive player,
just
maybe
everything.
A scholar one. He was named to the Butkus Award watch list and the Bednarik Award watch list. So I think he's up to 4. Mitch McCarthy, the punter, was named to the Ray Guy Award watch list, which obviously goes to the best punter. And then RJ Harvey was named to the Doak Walker Award watch list, which, hey, be cool to see him win the Doak Walker Award at the end of the year.
Would be cool. I don't think it'll happen, but
things for UCF. Cool. But yeah, I always just love the watch list because it's like there's like so many. It's like
it's so dumb.
40 guys.
Because that's the thing is like the watch list. Like you'll look and there will be ones that they have like 60 guys on here, and it's just like okay,
like keep an eye on these 60 guys. Like,
and then it's some guy that's not on the list who ends up winning it, like clockwork. It's so funny.
Yeah. Last little bit here, the AP Top 25 dropped on Monday, which is again another sign that we are getting closer and closer. There are 4 current Big 12 teams in the top 25. It's number 11 Texas, number 16 Kansas State, number 17 TCU, and number 20 Oklahoma. And then future member Utah is number 14. So some representation there throughout the current and future Big 12.
Yes.
And of that list, UCF gets 2 of them as of right now. They're ranked, obviously. Number 16 Kansas State on the road, and number 20 Oklahoma on the road. So
it's crazy times.
Would you envision both of them still being ranked by the time UCF plays them?
I have no idea.
So, right?
I have no earthly idea. I
don't know
how
Kansas
to go
State's...
about predicting that. I'm trying to pull up Kansas State's right now to see, because Oklahoma's too late into the season to know. Kansas State, we can see. I feel like they have a big out of conference game though.
Do they?
Okay, so they start with Southeast Missouri State, which is a real school. Then Troy.
Wait, yeah, isn't that UCF got a player from them a couple years ago?
From Southeast Missouri State?
I believe so.
Okay. Then they play Troy, then they play at Mizzou, and then UCF. So they probably will still be ranked, because unless Missouri absolutely crushes them, they'll probably still be ranked, whether they win that game or not. So yeah. UCF will likely, its first ever Big 12 game. It's a good shot. Yeah, because they're 16. So if they win the first 2 easily, which they will, they might be up to like 13 or 12 by the Missouri game, since other teams will have lost. And then even if they lose that, as long as it's close, they'll probably still be in the 20s.
Even with Oklahoma, it's late in the season, but I still almost feel like it's a lock. Like I don't know.
It's not a lock. Oklahoma won 6-7 last year. What are you on about?
I just don't think they're not going to be that. So they play Arkansas State, and they play SMU, then they play Tulsa.
Oh, all these games are easy.
Cincinnati, Iowa State, Texas, which they might lose, and then UCF after Texas.
Wow, like Texas is like the only losable game in that
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah,
I feel like it's a lock.
There you go.
So 2 ranked opponents for UCF as of right now. So that'd be cool. So let's jump on to Tweet of the Week.
Tweet of the Week. So RBJ, who you all know, who also, by the way, is now running the Barstool UCF account and doing an absolutely fantastic job of it.
It's so good.
It's really good. He tweeted, "What is a successful season in your eyes this year for UCF?" And I replied and said, "Be the best of the new 4. Simple as that." That was my reply. And I've said that on this podcast many times. That's my personal bar, is be better than the other 3 new guys. Bounce House Grillin, which is this account I've seen around and is one of those ones where the way they tweet them, like, are you a real person or like a bot? I'm actually still not sure. Maybe I'm giving a bot tweet of the week, but they replied to me and said, "No way, be top 5 in the conference." And then it gets better because they replied again and said, "Success is based on data." Okay, Kirk Herbstreit. "I've heard nothing but we are good. We are deep. JRP doing great. Depth is great. Based off of that, I've been hearing from coaches UCF should win 8 to 9 games this year. Anything less begs to question the rhetoric." So this is like my favorite thing when fans do this, because it's so amazingly dumb. It is you have players go up there in a press conference and you say, "How's the team looking?" And they're like, "The team looks good." And then fans are like, "Wow, we're going to crush it this year." It's like there's no reality where a player is going to stand up in front of media and you say, "How does the team look?" And he's going to say, "Man, we suck. We're not good. This is going to be a really tough year." Yeah, Gus Malzahn's got up there and be like, "Coach, how's the team look?" And he's like, "Terrible. Like I might get fired." Like it's how do fans do this year after year? It's like it's a press conference. But I love. So that's right. There is at least one UCF fan out there who's expecting 9 wins, because when asked if JRP is looking good, Gus didn't say nope, still sucks. So that's where we're at.
Let's go. All right.
Can't
UCF
wait.
Conference champs.
You heard it here first. UCF is going to win the Big 12 because the coaches and players have not said that the team is bad.
Good job, UCF. Congrats, everybody! Buy your Big 12 championship game.
Big 12
tickets
championship
now,
game tickets are on sale. Get them now. UCF's going to be there.
Oh man, yeah. You texted me the other day. You were like, "Who's buying this already?" And I'm like, big fans of Big 12 football. Just they're ready.
We're big fans of Big 12 football. I'm a big 12 football fan. Happened for
but I still I wouldn't travel for the game not knowing. I guess if I could, I would.
I would buy tickets, and then it would be like Iowa State, Kansas, or something like ridiculous, and they're both like 9-3, and no one cares. That feels like that'd be my luck.
Yeah, probably. But hey, we are getting closer and closer.
Dangerously close.
As we're speaking, it's 17 days. As you're listening to this, probably 16 days. And then by the time you hear from us next, it'll be just 10, almost single-digit days. Which is
next week is our last pod that isn't a game preview.
Yeah,
man, wow. This is exciting. This is good.
So yeah, keep leaving us those 5-star reviews. Keep asking us your questions. We'll be back next week with episode 154. But until then, you can find us on Twitter at BaileyJAdams22, @ByCA Simmons, and @Night Sports Now. Thank you guys so much for being with us, and we'll talk to you soon.
Bye, everybody.